What is up, Internet? So we have finally another great book for review for you. But first we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. September 29th, we finally get to do the allegorical matrix presentation. It's going to be in Elkhart in Michiana Education and Arts Center. I forget, it's like on Edwardsburg Road or something like that. It starts at 3 p.m. It's an absolutely free event. As far as I know, it's all ages. That might change. I'm very excited. Like we said on Facebook and a couple of YouTube videos that most of the venues we hit up for that, they were literally too greedy to let us, come into their building for for like 4 hours and to record an allegorical movie night. So finally, we get to do it. We became members, or at least I did. We need to get the other one to be a member. Join membership. The Meek Club. I love that club. It's a great venue. But anyways, I think that's the only housekeeping. There's a lot of good punk rock shows coming up here in Mishawaka. There's one in August, like the Distractions and Flamingo Nosebleed are playing. There's another in Newcastle, Indiana. I'm pretty sure that show is still going on. Newcastle, we have the Foleys, the 012s, and I'm opening up the show, Dead and Unsara. So that should be a fun show. We're looking for another band, by the way, if anybody knows. But whatever. Enough housekeeping. Let's get into it. This is George Orwell's 1984. I love this book, although it took me a long time to get through it because the first time I read this book, I was going through a really rough time. I was living in a house very similar to Winston, our character in the book, Winston. He lifts up a cigarette at the beginning of the book and all the tobacco just falls out. I was smoking cigarettes like that. I was drinking a lot, drinking alone a lot, and playing a lot of Pokemon. So it took me, it was a little tough to get through this book. That's why it took so long. But, so right away Chapter 1, we are introduced to our main protagonist, Winston, just getting off work and walking to his drab apartment. The city is filled with dilapidated houses and Big Brother posters, looking like the town he walks through. The way he's describing it, it looks like, sounding like Gary, Indiana. The apartment is reminiscent of a jail cell, equipped with a TV that has to constantly have eyes on you. Food, cigarettes, and alcohol are all made by the same brand. The brand is called Victory. That makes me think of a lot of the you go to the food store and like Walmart has their brand and K. Roger has their brand and Martin's. They all have their own brand, even though it's all made by the same company. It's kind of funny, but food, cigarettes, and alcohol made by the same brand. Winston looks down on most women, which is very it's kind of he's got a poisoned worldview. Because a lot of women in this book, they simp for the government. I wrote down that they simp for the government. Although he's recently been crushing on somebody he sees on the daily going home from work. It's noted that the woman he has eyes on reps a junior anti-sex league sort of sash on her uniform, and Winston, obviously being a lonely man, sits in his apartment drinking alone. He has a little red book he bought from a secondhand shop that he uses as a diary to get his endless thoughts out. But the fact that he has this book it's like illegal. Although in this society nothing is illegal because there is no crime. I think that's what O'Brien says. Winston. So similar to the Matrix, nobody knows exactly what year it is because the Ministry of Truth is constantly they're constantly changing things, which we'll learn more about. The community participates in an event. I think they do it every day, called the 2 Minutes of Hate, where there's a known terrorist. A picture of a known terrorist is put on the screen, and people scream insults at the top of their lungs. And they put their betrayers, the people who betrayed the quote-unquote party, because that's what the government in this book is called, the party. That's what the party, Big Brother, and okay, well, so we'll get to the quote. Day by day, almost minute by minute, the past was brought up to date. In this way, every prediction made by the party could be shown by documentary evidence to have been correct. nor was any item of news or any expression of opinion which conflicted with the needs of the moment ever allowed to remain on record. All history was a palimpsest, scraped clean and reinscribed exactly as often was necessary. In no case would it have been possible, once the deed was done, to prove that any falsification has taken place. Yeah, so that's basically how they run the media. And then we found out that the traitors of the party are hung in the park at least once a month. So they're doing these public galleys, I guess. I don't know what you would call them. Yeah. And so like it solidifies people's patriotism, basically. You know, all these public hangings. It keeps people loyal to the party. It keeps them in cognitive dissonance. You know, the officers are known to make people disappear at nighttime, and completely wiping away any evidence of their existence is referred in the book to as vaporizing. You know, and that I hate to, that still happens nowadays. Like, when is Edward Snowden going to be able to come back home? You know, like it's crazy. Again, this book is written in, I believe it was written in like the 50s or the 60s, and everything that happens in this book, just like all the other books that we reviewed, a lot of it comes to fruition. Winston ends up going to his neighbor's flat to repair a leaky pipe, and he notices that their apartment is even more dilapidated than his, and they have kids, and the children seem to have all the authority in the house. And that's how it is. Shoot, you could even say that's how it is today. You know, nowadays, children walk all over their parents all the time. Children are so absolutely disrespectful nowadays. This generation it's intense. So that's another thing that came true out of this book. All children are encouraged by the party to snitch on anyone that rebels, or snitch on anyone that goes against the thought police, including their own parents. And so after performing thought crimes and writing them down in the diary, Winston then declares himself as a dead man. You know, and a lot of us, if you study a lot of these great minds like Mark Passio and Mark Devlin and Wake the Dead, they refer to, like, the elites refer to the police as the dead. You know, that's how they look at us, so to speak. Once realizing that he's a dead man, he sees his family in this place called, you know, I call it the sunken place, and they talk about that on Wake the Dead podcast with Sean McCann and James Cordner. They talk about this place called the sunken place, and it's in a lot of movies. I wrote down that it's in Get Out. That's another great allegory. The movie Get Out by Jordan Peele. They kind of show a good representation of what the sunken place is, and what somebody's consciousness. It shows you. What am I trying to say? It shows you. It's a perfect depiction of what somebody's consciousness is like when they're in the sunken place. This was really good. Check out that allegory. Get Out is an amazing film. It's a modern day classic. Just like Midsummer. Midsummer blew me away when at first I refused to see it because I was like, oh, it's just another schlock movie. But it actually turned out to be really good. So Winston then goes to work and describes what he does at his job. He alters any and every form of document to align with the present. Oh, whoops, I read the wrong quote. Yeah, to align with the present. I already read that quote. So it is briefly mentioned that someone who gets arrested may be released. They might have a few years of prison, and then they go through a few years of prison, they get released, and then they become vaporized, or they go on the public executions, one of those. Some thought criminals would vanish only to appear on trial to snitch on fellow comrades before vanishing for good. Occasionally Winston would have to write up a report worshipping a party member worthy of looking up to, like a deceased soldier or an extremely devoted worker. Most of the time, the person that they promote in these news articles, the people don't even exist, and the photos would be fabricated in order to farther sell it. And that will bring into mind the real life instances, like they had the Tupac hologram on stage a couple years ago. I think it was at Coachella, one of the horrible music festivals that I would not recommend anybody to go to. Or even a few years later, you get devices like Alexa or Siri. Those you get those AI girlfriend apps that AI girlfriends apps that'll send you nudes when you're feeling lonely. And then not to mention there's also everybody's been making these AI art generator videos. Like somebody did a Black Sabbath AI art generated music video, and it's just like it's actually kind of good. But there's also some people who are using the AI art generators for good, like Nate Cap. We just had the weekend after Bowl Bash, we had the Freedom Under Natural Law conference, and Nate Cap even said in his presentation that he used the AI art generators for his presentations. I thought that was pretty cool. So he used it for good. But a lot of these devices, like, it's really bizarre. Like that Tupac hologram I was talking about, the guy who put that all together, he said it costs more money to put a 40-minute hologram it costs more money than it took to like create the whole music festival. So the hologram that he used cost like millions of dollars. I forget. They talk about that in Wake the Dead podcast. Check it out. Check out Wake the Dead podcast. Anyways, so after work there's a cafeteria where everyone eats together. The food quality is absolutely atrocious, and it seems like the food that they get fed is like what you would find in prison. And then they also have, of course, they have Victory Gin. They have alcohol for 10 cents a shot while everybody gets off work and eats lunch together. I thought that was really weird. They keep people drunk, and it's very similar to Brave New World, where it's like pleasure becomes people's slavery, and then once people are so into the pleasure, once they become so solipsistic and hedonistic that they don't need any overt control, because the people control themselves. So back home, Winston writes of his wife Catherine, who the party encourages couples without children to split once all the control happened. Nobody knows once the real overt slavery happened. Like nobody knows, because nobody knows what time it is. So I just brain farted. So anyways, back home, Winston writes of his wife, the party encouraged couples who don't have children to split, and he thinks back to when they tried to have a child together, even though chastity is ingrained in women to secure party loyalty. The junior sex league that they have. A riot breaks out in the streets below his apartment while he's writing in his diary over some tin saucepans. And that made me think of the Black Friday shoppers, where people were literally fist fighting over toilet paper. And that was a few short years ago. These adults, these so-called quote-unquote adults, were literally fist fighting over toilet paper. In the book, these guys are fist fighting over little saucepans, because the party basically destroyed everything. And at the beginning of the book, they can't even find razors to shave their face. One of Winston's comrades comes up and says, "Hey, do you have any razors?" And Winston lies to him, and says, "No, I don't have any razors," even though he stashed like 3 or 4. So it's a really weird, really bizarre, like how they control all the resources and the materials. A riot breaks out. That absolutely reminded me of the Black Friday thing. I'm going to give you guys another quote. "So long as they continue to work and breed, their other activities were without importance, left to themselves like cattle turned loose on the plains of Argentina. They had reverted to the style of life that appeared to be natural to them, a sort of ancestral pattern. They were born, they grew up in the gutters, they went to work at 12, they passed through a brief blossoming period of beauty and sexual desire, they married at 20, they were middle-aged at 30, they died for the most part at 60. Heavy physical work, the care of home and children, petty quarrels with the neighbors, films, football, beer, and above all, gambling filled up the horizon of their minds. To keep them in control was not difficult. Whew. That's a powerful quote right there. Man, I mean, again, relate that to modern day. I mean, you see it everywhere. You see it. We went to Chicago on St. Patty's Day, and like we were walking to the hotel room, and like we saw cops were beating people, and like while this dude was getting beat, and I think it was a black dude. Jasmine, do you remember? I guess it doesn't matter. Yeah, this cop was beating this innocent guy on the side of the street, and you know, there were like 4 or 5 people not doing anything, just watching and recording with their phones, and that's the most consciousness of people, unfortunately. So moving on. Winston begins skipping his communal deeds and recreations. Like they encourage you to do like after work. They encourage you to go like encourage the youth to, they encourage the younger people to join like the anti-sex league, to encourage the youth to be loyal to the party, basically to brainwash all the children. So you get off work and then you have all these communal activities that you go to, and like there's like sports, just like a Brave New World. There's sports as a recreational activity. There's the anti-sex league. There's a lot of various different things that like the book said, to keep them in control is not difficult. He began skipping his communal deeds, and I wrote that just like a Brave New World, everyone thinks that you're a weirdo if you spend time alone often, and which, if you read the book, Winston is very much a loner. Nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of loners in my life. I'm a freaking loner. So here's another quote. In principle, a party member had no spare time. It was never a what? Oh yeah, party member had no spare time and was never alone except in bed. It was assumed that when he was not working, eating, or sleeping, he would be taking part in some kind of communal recreation. To do anything that has suggested a taste of solitude, even to go for a walk by yourself, was always slightly dangerous. Ooh. There was a word for it in Newspeak. Own life. It's all one word. It was own life, it was called, meaning individualism and eccentricity. Wow, that's really interesting. So, as Winston is walking through the part of the proles town, so he goes past downtown where he lives, and he kind of goes through the ghetto, basically, where the proles live. Proles referring to the working class or the lower class citizens. Well, as he's walking through this town, it makes me think of Fable, the video game Fable 2. At the very beginning of Fable 2, you're walking through like these slums, and everybody has these very thick Cockney accents, like, "Hello, governor, like, how are you doing?" And if you have in Fable 2, if you get like if you become an evil person, the people in the towns will like start cussing at you, and they'll be like, "Oh, there's the swine walking past." It's hilarious. So Winston's walking his way through the NPCs. When he's walking down the village, and they're kind of doing the same thing. He's walking through town, and he's got his work gear, he's still got his full uniform, and everybody's just kind of staring at him like he doesn't belong there, and that that made me think, people still do that nowadays. Like, we went to Chicago, we went to a hotel in Chicago to go see Base from a Death for our birthdays, and in this hotel, everybody stared at me and Jasmine, and Lazy ended up showing too to come hang out with us, but everybody kept staring at us like, you guys don't belong here. How do you afford to be here? It's really weird. People are so judgmental. That happened here in South Bend too, our hometown. Even we got a hotel at this place called the Loft, and we walk through the lobby with our little dog, and everybody's like, goosenecking. Everybody's goosenecking to check you out. It's like, man, I shave regularly. I don't know what the hell they're staring at, but So he's walking through this. He's walking through the ghetto. In the ghetto. Winston then he follows an older chap into a local pub, and he kind of wanders in this pub, following the local chap. He wants to question the guy about life before the war and before Big Brother. He's trying to find out answers, and Winston finds no answers and only repressed memories. He leaves the bar and goes to a shop where he bought his blank diary at. So then the shop owner, he's this frail old guy. He's an awesome character, but he's one of those types where at any minute he could just drop like, a huge nugget of knowledge at any minute. You just have a conversation with this guy. Like, reminds me of Uncle Charlie. Shout out to Uncle Chooch. Just any minute they'll just drop like the biggest nugget of knowledge you've ever heard in your life and absolutely blow your mind. They begin discussing churches and old buildings that have been demolished. Like few of the only buildings, because there's constantly missile attacks. So some of the only buildings that are still standing are churches. Actually, I just thought of that. That's kind of ironic. They begin discussing churches and old buildings that have been demolished, while the owner shows Winston this old bedroom where the owner and his wife used to sleep together. The whole scene reminds me of a Coldplay song called "Cemeteries of London." It was really cool. The scene is awesome, but you could tell like the shop owner he's definitely a broken man. We never learned about his wife or anything like that. Unfortunately, I wish we could have learned more, but. So he's just this frail old guy. Leaving the shop, he starts developing plans and ideas about renting the spare bedroom for a nice quiet place to get some solitude, some much needed solitude, because like in this society you're never alone. And even when he gets off work and he's eating lunch, his comrades keep constantly like walking up to him and talking to him, even though he's thinking very introspectively in his own consciousness, and his comrades just like, "Hey, you got any razors?" Like, you can tell they kind of annoy him if you read the book. I don't like how much I can relate to Winston, but I don't know. But so leaving the shop, he starts developing plans. After all, the room has no TV in it, so there's no cameras basically. There's no way of people to spy on him in the room. Right as he is thinking this, he notices a coworker from the fiction department concluding that she is spying on him, and he books it back home. He's like, "Oh, I gotta get back to the house." And the coworker that he thinks is spying on him is actually the chick that he's been crushing on. So here's another quote. He thought with a kind of astonishment of the biological usefulness of pain and fear, the treachery of the human body which always freezes into inertia at exactly the moment when a special effort is needed. He might have silenced the dark-haired girl if only he acted quickly enough, but precisely because of the extremity of his danger he had only lost the power to act. It struck him in the moments of crisis, one is never fighting against an external enemy, but always against one's own body. Even now, in spite of the gin, the dull ache in his belly made consecutive thought impossible. And it is the same, he perceived, in all seemingly heroic or tragic situations. On the battlefield, in the torture chamber, on a sinking ship, the issues that you are fighting for are always forgotten, because the body swells up until it fills the universe, and even when you are not paralyzed by fright or screaming with pain, life is a moment-to-moment struggle against hunger or cold or sleeplessness, against a sour stomach or an aching tooth. He opened the diary. It was important to write something down. The woman on the telescreens has started singing a new song. Her voice seemed to stick into his brain like jagged splinters of glass. He tried to think of O'Brien, for whom or to whom the diary was written, but instead he began thinking of the thing that would happen to him after the thought police took him away. It would not matter if they killed you at once. To be killed was what you expected, but before death, nobody spoke of such things, yet everybody knew of them. There were the routine of confession that had to be gone through, the groveling on the floor and screaming of mercy, the crack of broken bones, the smashed teeth and bloody clots of hair. What did you have to endure it, since the end was always the same? Why was it not possible to cut a few days or weeks out of your life? Nobody ever escaped detection, and nobody ever failed to confess. When once you had succumbed to thought crime, it was certain that by the given date you would be dead. Why, then, did that horror which altered nothing have to lie embedded in future time? That's an interesting quote. And I forgot to say the slogan of Big Brother, which I would argue that this slogan of Big Brother, which is the direct inspiration of the movie V for Vendetta, the slogan is "War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength." Ignorance is strength. But hey, I mean, look, like I say all the time on this channel, look around, and that quote is very, 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 very predominant today with our generation and everything that's been happening. So yeah, so that quote inspired the graphic novel V for Vendetta, which is another amazing allegory. We're doing the Matrix allegorical breakdown. V for Vendetta is on that list. There's Terminator 2 is on that list. There's so many movies on that list that we got to get to. There's a lot of work to do. And speaking of, I got to do my notes. I got to finish my notes, but I start class Monday. I start How to Become the True Media Seminar. I'm so excited. So moving on, at Chapter 2, at the beginning of Chapter 2, it is a regular mundane day of work, but he sees the girl he thought was a spy. She has her arm in a sling, literally due to work. Falling over and hurting herself, Winston scrambles to help her up, channeling his sacred feminine, empathizing with her pain. She slips a note in his pocket, causing him to be unable to focus on his work or anything for the rest of the day. And the note simply read, oh, I guess spoilers alert for people who haven't read a book that was written in the 1950s. The note that she slips in his pocket simply read, "I love you," which I thought was pretty cool. Winston meets his mysterious crush at Victory Square to arrange another meeting, and while on the train, he overhears a family talking about black market butter, bringing to mind another scene in V for Vendetta where Evie, the character Evie, is in V for Vendetta's gallery, and he feeds her egg, toast, real tea, and real butter. And Evie comments on this, and she says, "I haven't had real butter since I was a little girl." And that's again reminiscent of how things are today. I mean, if you go look at butter in a store, most of it is like, it's just vegetable spread. It's not real actual butter. So, and it's like, and vegetable spread is absolutely detrimental to the body. They're like, the oils that they put in food nowadays is just horrible. Again, I highly recommend, look up Wake the Dead podcast for more information on that, or the Black Pill Digest podcast that Sean McCann and James Cordner do together. They're both on the One Great Work Network. They do amazing work on the food that we eat. Oh, I lost my spot. Oh yeah, another scene. So he gets off the train following very precise directions that she gave him. Meeting the girl in a field, Winston and Julia, great Beatles song by the way, Julia, have a really romantic quiet time in the country. They're cuddling in the grass. I think Winston even might get laid. Winston gets some action. Lonely man gets some action. My man! So they have a really romantic time. Julia also shares a piece of genuine chocolate, so they're not used to having real chocolate, again, just like the butter thing. She refers to the party as them, and when speaking of them, she curses a lot and seems to be very vitriolic. But Winston quite enjoys it, saying it seems very natural and healthy. Her vitriol seems very natural and healthy. And to plug another little movie here, that reminds me of the fourth Matrix movie, where Trinity shows some anger towards the system in a coffee shop. That Trinity and Neo sit down in a coffee shop together, and she shares some anger, and Neo's like, "No, it's quite okay. I really enjoy it," because they're connecting. A lot in this society that they have, people don't connect. There's no connections. There's no love, I guess you could say. So they share this awesome moment. Read the book because this moment is great. It's a really great moment. I'll do another little quote here. So his heart leapt. Scores of times she had done it. He wished it had been hundreds, thousands. Anything that hinted at corruption always filled him with a wild hope. Who knew? Perhaps the party was rotten under the surface. Its cult... I like this quote. Its cult of strenuous and self-denial, simply a sham concealing iniquity. If he could have infected the whole lot of him with leprosy or syphilis, he gladly would have done so. Anything to rot, to weaken, to undermine. He pulled her down so that they were kneeling face to face. That's kind of satanic what he said. He wishes leprosy on everybody. That's not really natural. But, yeah, strenuous, it's cult of strenuous and self-denial. I know a lot of people guilty of those things. So Winston starts saying he enjoys the corruption and that he loves her self-indulgence, which is a form, it's a form of Satanism. Self-indulgence is a form of Satanism. The beast within you, living within the reptilian complex of the brain, the R complex, the survival complex. Reminiscent of Brave New World, again, showing how deeply ingrained their minds are. With cognitive dissonance, they revel in the chaos. These people revel in the chaos. That thanks to like whenever an accident happens, everybody starts coming out of their house. If there's a big car accident in front of them, everybody starts coming out of the house and watching the cops and watching the firefight. It's really weird. It's as if people have no true entertainment or no true hobbies in their life. They revel in chaos. Winston then says, "We are the dead," which kind of triggers Julia, and they have a disagreement before setting up another meeting and splitting up. Our protagonist does end up convincing the shop owner to rent out the flat. Inevitably, they meet up. Julie brings some more dumbfounding gifts. She brings real coffee, real sugar, and one packet of tea. And then she even puts on a little lingerie, a little lingerie and makeup here. Because apparently makeup is like nobody wears makeup, which I think that's a good thing. But the lingerie definitely should not be banned though. Lingerie is awesome. Do not ban lingerie. She does a little get up. They have another romantic. Actually, whenever me and Jasmine get a hotel room, like, it makes me think of this scene, which made me super happy to read this book now that life isn't total crap. Now life is much more positive now. I'm not smoking nasty cigarettes where the tobacco falls out, and I'm not drinking horrible alcohol anymore. So anyways, since Hate Week is coming up, it's going to be a while before they get to see each other again. And, so they have the 2 minutes of hate, and then they have an entire week of Hate Week where everybody's working way too damn much. So here's another quote. A new poster had suddenly appeared all over London. It had no caption and represented simply the monstrous figure of a Eurasian soldier. I need Mario West to help me pronounce that. 3 or 4 meters high, striding forward with expressionless Mongolian face and enormous boots, a submachine gun pointed from his hip. From whatever angle you looked at the poster, the muzzle of the gun, magnified by the foreshortening, seemed to be pointed straight at you. The thing had been plastered on every blank space, every wall, even outnumbering the ports of Big Brother. The proles, normally apathetic about war, were being lashed into one of their periodical frenzies of patriotism. As though to harmonize with the general mood, the rocket bombs had been killing larger numbers of people than usual. One fell on a crowded film theater in Stephanie, burying several hundred victims among the ruins. The whole population of the neighborhood turned out for a long time. Exactly like what I just said. The whole population of the neighborhood turned out for a long time. Trailing funeral which went on for hours and was in effect an indignation meeting. Another bomb fell in a place of a waste ground which was used as a playground, and several dozen children were blown to pieces. There were further angry demonstrations. Goldstein was burned in effigy. Hundreds of copies of the poster of the Eurasian soldier were torn down and added to the flames, and a number of shops were looted in the turmoil. Then a rumor flew around that the spies were directing the rocket bombs by means of wireless waves, and an old couple who were suspected of being of foreign extractions had their house set on fire and perished of suffocation. Jesus! That's a lot. So, and these, like, everything that happens in this scene really reminds me of everything that happens in the BLM riots back in the day, you know, and what happened when Kyle Rittenhouse shot a skateboarder with a rifle. He shot a kid holding a skateboard with a rifle and got away with it, you know. And so those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. And we keep repeating history and nobody's learning. Like, oh my gosh. Like all these lootings that were going down, you know, it says Goldstein, which was burned in effigy, which, you know, like, gosh, there's like the Burning Man festival, that's totally different, but, you know, they're burning effigies. I just saw a picture on Facebook the other day of somebody burning a flag. And this chick was burning a flag, and she was totally topless. She had like some straps above her, you know, her nipples, and you know, it's just like, and everybody was sharing it. All these fake ass punk rock bands were sharing this photo of a topless chick burning a flag as if it was some sort of like. I understand the idea of like burning the materialism, burning the patriotism, but realistically, you could see in the picture the plastic was like melting because the flags are made with so much plastic. So it's like you're burning a plastic flag, which you're literally causing pollution because you're not supposed to burn plastic. I mean, hello, like. In case anybody didn't know, you're not supposed to burn plastic. So I saw all these punk rock bands sharing this picture of a chick holding a burning flag, which it was literally, you know, like you're producing emissions, like you're killing the planet by burning a flag. And not to mention, where did you buy the flag from? Where did you get this flag? Would you buy it at Walmart? So you gave this multi-million-dollar corporation your money just to turn around and burn it. Like, what you're doing is not a real act of rebelling. It's like fake rebelling. It's so stupid. It gets me so fired up. But anyways, so during the month of June, they met in the room up to 7 times. Their little hotel room above the shop. Winston drops his habit of drinking copious amounts of gin. His ulcer cooled off. His swelling on his legs start going down. He's got no more coughing fits. He's got an overall positive view on life. He really found that PMA. You know, he found that positive mental attitude because he's like living his life. He's doing what he wants. He's got a nice, seemingly loyal girlfriend to hang out with. You know, they spend time together. They're very loyal to each other. They love each other. You know, they have a seemingly healthy relationship. Personally, I always felt that Julia was/is a spy. Some of the things that she says is suspect. Not to mention when they're getting freaky in the woods. Hell yeah. When they're getting freaky in the woods, she casually mentions that she's done it hundreds of times. You know, so she's taken like multiple dudes in the woods. How in this society, how are you doing it that often without getting caught? You know, even Winston says, as soon as you commit an act of thought crime, it's just a matter of time until they found you. And she's like saying, oh, I've done this hundreds of times. I steal coffee and bang people out in the woods all the time. It's like a normal thing for me. But we're going to get into another quote here. Alright, but one can imagine little knots of resistance springing up here and there, small groups of people banding themselves together and gradually throwing and even leaving a few records behind so that the next generation can carry on where we leave off. And this is Winston talking to Julia. And Julia says, I'm not interested in the next generation, dear. I'm interested in us. So it's Satanism. That's why I don't really, never trusted this lady. "You're only a rebel from the waist downwards," he told her. She thought this brilliantly witty and flung her arms around him in delight. So that reminds me of the ending of the movie Eyes Wide Shut, Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. The ending. I try not to cuss on this channel, so I literally can't quote the ending of that movie. But if you haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut, go check it out. It's amazing, another amazing allegory. If you don't have anything to do, I totally lost my spot again. Okay, so fast forward another workday. In the same exact hallway, Julian slipped Winston a note. O'Brien bumps into Winston, and O'Brien is supposedly a member of the secret underground resistance called the Brotherhood. Bringing to mind the movie The Equilibrium. Like the quote I just read. He's like, we want to leave this evidence for the next generation, so we can get these small groups of people banding themselves together and gradually growing, and hopefully getting away from the covert control. That's why we have things like One Great Work Network, or there's the Grand Theft World, or there's Wake the Dead podcast, or the Cubbyhole podcast. There's these little underground resistance groups that I think are awesome. It's sad that we have to be in the underground, but hey, that's how it is. So that's what's happening. Winston's is looking out for the next generation, and she's just like, yeah, I don't care, whatever. So the resistance group, the Brotherhood, bringing to mind another great allegory, Equilibrium. O'Brien is such a sketchball. He turns around and writes his address on a piece of paper for Winston. He does it right in front of a set of TVs on the wall, right in front of a set of TVs and cameras. So, I don't know. For those of you that read the book, you know what's coming. Back in bed with Julia, Winston remembers some childhood trauma through a dream. And Winston would bully his little sister by stealing food because they had to share portions growing up. One day he stole her chocolate and ran away from home. But when he ran away from home for a few hours, when he started getting really hungry again, he decided to go back home. When he went back home, his mom and his sister were gone and the house was untouched. So the thought police probably came, and one of the neighbors might have snitched, or maybe even the daughters got old enough to where she could snitch and took the mom and daughter away. Never to be seen again, basically vaporized, as they say in the book, That made me think of something else, but I'm just going to keep going. Meanwhile, the couple meet at O'Brien's apartment, or his flat, to receive the dictionary. They end up toasting with wine, and O'Brien says, "To our leader, Emmanuel Goldstein," which... everybody says Emmanuel Goldstein is a communist. I think that name, Emmanuel Goldstein, that name is a reference to Emma Goldman, which is she's the Russian anarchist. She began to study anarchism after the Chicago Haymarket affair, also known as the Haymarket Riot. Shout out to Squared Off. If you don't know who Squared Off is, and you consider yourself a punk rocker, you don't know who Squared Off is, you're messing up. We love Squared Off here at Beagle Eye Visions. Amazing music. You can find it on Bandcamp, Spotify, whatever. But shout out to Squared Off. Emma Goldman was a writer. She was a renowned lecturer on anarchist philosophy, women's rights, and other social issues. A true, total legend. Give it up for Emma Goldman, everybody. Emma Goldman. Like I said, I don't know if Emmanuel Goldstein is a reference to her, but it made me think of her, and she doesn't get enough credit. None of these anarchists from way back in the day who are no longer with us ever get enough credit. Winston finally receives the dictionary, the textbook, the book that he gets, but it is during Hate Week, and during Hate Week, everybody is working more than 90 hours in 5 days because they really got to crunch them numbers. It's Hate Week. Opening the book, we find out that the title of the book is called The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism. And I wrote down a quote directly out of that book, because the book he reads, the portions of the book where it's like it shows that he's reading directly through the book, it's really heady. It's really kind of tough to get through, but it's worth it. It's worth to get through. Some of the information in the book that he reads is great. It's really good. Page 185 to 186. Okay, so in one combination or another, these three superstates are permanently at war and have been so for the past 25 years. Does that sound familiar? Does that? War, however, is no longer the desperate, annihilating struggle that it was in the early decades of the 20th century. Does that sound familiar? It is a warfare of limited aims between combatants who are unable to destroy one another, have no material cause for fighting, and are not divided by any genuine ideological differences. That is not to say that either the conduct of war or the prevailing attitude towards it has become less bloodthirsty or more chivalrous. On the contrary, war hysteria is continuous and universal in all countries, and such acts as raping, looting, the slaughter of children, the reduction of whole populations to slavery, and reprisals against prisoners which extend even to boiling and burying alive are looked upon as normal, and when they are committed by one's own side and not by the enemy, meritorious. I mean, that hit the nail on the head right there. We just showed my little sister Grace the movie called Snowden, and there's a lot of quotes in that movie where they even, the head honcho, like Snowden's boss in the movie, he even says that warfare today is not what it used to be. It's all with computers, you know. It's not taking a gun and going out and shooting your enemy directly in the face anymore. Now it's like, he even said in the movie, it's a psychological warfare that we're dealing with, which is why we need to read books, and we need to study these guys. We need to read all sorts of books. I'm talking about, we need to read the Bible. We need to read the Satanic Bible. We need to read The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. We need to read all these books. We need to be very well read. Like Bob Marley said, the people who I am up against never take a day off, so why should I? You know, and like, this is why we promote books here at this channel, because people need to care. People need to pay attention. They need to spend time and pay attention, because this is still going on today. Everything I just said in that quote is still going on to this day. That paragraph describes modern warfare with perfection. Oh, here's another quote, and this is, again, he's still reading out of the book. In the vast laboratories of the Ministry of Peace and in the experimental stations hidden in the Brazilian forest or in the Australian desert or on the islands of the Antarctic, the team of experts are indefatigably at work. Some are concerned simply with planning the logistics of future wars. Others devise larger and larger rocket bombs, more and more powerful explosives. I mean, sound familiar? More and more powerful explosives, and more impenetrable armor plating. Others search for new and deadlier gases, or for soluble poisons capable of being produced in such quantities as to destroy the vegetation of whole continents, or for breeds of disease germs immunized against all possible antibodies. Dare I say the C word that put us into 2 years of a pandemic. Dare I say it? Dare I say it for the channel that might ban me because 1984 doublespeak exists. So if you say the wrong word, you might get banned. You might get shadow banned. Like Mark Devlin got banned from YouTube, just like Alex Jones and a whole bunch of people, man. Back to the quote. Impenetrable armor. Others search for new and deadlier gases, or for soluble poisons being produced in such quantities to destroy vegetations, breeds of disease, germs, immunized against all possible antibodies. Others strive to produce a vehicle that shall bore its way under the soil like a submarine under the water, or an airplane independent of its base as a sailing ship. Others explore even remoter possibilities, such as focusing the sun's rays through lenses suspended thousands of kilometers away in space, or producing artificial earthquakes by tidal waves by tapping the heat of the Earth's center. Holy crap! There is so much happening in that one paragraph. I mean, you're talking, what is Elon Musk trying to do? He's trying to send everybody to Mars. When they're talking about producing artificial earthquakes and tidal waves, that makes me think of, what's the word for it? Aromatic, gosh, what do they say in Wake the Dead? There's an entire episode based on what I just said in this paragraph on Wake the Dead podcast. Aromatic, it's just global engineering. I'm just going to say global engineering. And they're still working on it. That's what they're working on to this day. Because us taxpayers, we just give them all of our money and say, we know you trust us. We know you're looking out for us. Here's our money. Who will build the roads? Who will build the roads? I'm almost done. Laying in bed, Winston reads the book. Winston reads the book to Julia until she falls asleep. When they wake up, they share a moment of peace, watching a mother do her daily chores. This mom is really, really strong. Like the growlers say, a woman should be strong with thick legs and big arms. Winston and Julia are just watching this chick go to work, and she's hanging up laundry, and she's very graceful, like what Pat Martin says in the Vice documentary about Bruce and Brandon skating. Like, Brandon's really graceful, and he goes and he does it. And so they're having a little romantic moment watching this mom. It's super awesome. I love that scene. It was a beautiful scene. They're watching this mother. They have a moment of peace watching mother do her daily chores, and the moment is crushed by Big Brother. It's a really cool scene. You should definitely get this book. It's cheap. Again, this book is so cheap. You can get it off Amazon for freaking $7 probably. Julia gets knocked out from a club in front of Winston by the police, and the owner of the shop turns out to be the Thought Police. I still don't trust Julia, though. I think Julia is still, I don't know. That's just my opinion. Put it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. So Chapter 3, Winston is some sort of holding cell with a camera and a screen, and if he moves an inch, they yell at him. There are various set of characters going in and out, but few of them are deathly afraid of Room 101. He meets some of the other prisoners in the holding cell, and when the other prisoners are like, please, anything but Room 101, take my kids, take my wife, I'll do anything but 101. There are various set of characters.
No power. Please charge battery.
I guess that's our cue. Winston finally gets taken to another room for beating and torture, where O'Brien instills the Big Brother philosophy. And the ending is very sad, which is why it took me a really long time to get through this book. I was slacking because Jasmine wasn't beating me good enough with it. Anyways, so I'm trying to think of some closing notes. Like, there's so much that happens in this book. So many layers, like all good allegories. Midsummer, Terminator 2, The Matrix. So a lot of layers. I don't even know where to start. There's geoengineering, there's the control. Okay, so one thing, I'll close out on this. So in this book, they're dealing with overt control. It's not hidden control. It's control that's like right in front of their faces, like ruled with an iron fist. But our generation, we are dealing with covert slavery. We are dealing with hidden slavery. We have to. Just like,
charge battery.
Shut up, lady. Just like he says in The Matrix, not all people are ready to be unplugged. But now we're ran out of time. Everybody needs to start getting unplugged. Start reading books. Buy this book, Amazon. You can probably find it for $7-8. I want to get the hard copy. This book was given to me. And I read it on the train in Chicago, and so that this copy's been through some stuff. Jasmine read it. Yeah. So we'll close out on that. We are dealing with, what did I say? Covert slavery. So you got to study Wake the Dead. Basically, tune into the One Great Work Network at any time of the day. They're usually always going strong. If One Great Work Network's not there, or it's not your flavor, Cubbyhole Podcast. I think everybody should watch Cubbyhole Podcast. The way Nate's voice is very calm. It's very soothing. You could even fall asleep to Cubbyhole Podcast. That's how good it is. It's so nice. All right. I gotta make dinner. All right. Keep your head up, internet. Keep studying. Don't forget that real hip hop is higher infinite power healing our people, and that's what Team Unity.
Please charge battery.
Team Unity is about the real hip hop. You know, don't be fooled by fake hip hop. You know, yeah. Peace.